call this special representative town meeting to order. It's 8:35, and I would ask our check-in attendants and our assistant town clerk, Jane Fletcher. Jane, do we in fact have a quorum?
Yeah, 102.
102, which 78 necessary for a quorum. We do indeed have a quorum to transact business. So in terms of beginning with some announcements, this meeting is being broadcast live on BCTV Channel 10, on Comcast and Southern Vermont Cable, as well as streaming live at BrattleboroTV.org. You can watch the rebroadcast on Channel 10 over the next 2 weeks, or online anytime at BrattleboroTV.org. Thank you for speaking into the microphones provided so that viewers can hear your comments. The meeting is being interpreted today for the deaf and hard of hearing by Elizabeth Burke and Janet Dickinson. Today's refreshments out in the corridor are being provided by the students of the BUHS Costa Rica Exchange Program, and they will be here through late morning. Ask everybody to please shut off their cell phones. By way of further announcements, I would like to announce that Professor Marshall Wheelock has graciously agreed to lead a brief introductory class in town meeting history and in parliamentary procedure beginning at 8 o'clock here next Saturday before the annual town meeting. Marshall will meet with anyone who would like the benefit of his wisdom in the back of the room at 8 o'clock. All members are welcome, especially new members. Marshall's right back here. The rules of this meeting are determined by Vermont law, the Brattleboro Town Charter, and Robert's Rules of Order. Voting on the main article today will be by Australian Ballot. Polls will open at 10 a.m. and they will close half an hour after the meeting is recessed. The town clerk oversees the Australian ballot voting, and you can pick up your ballots from the assistant town clerks who you checked in with this morning at the check-in desk. Since the main article is to be voted upon by Australian ballot, the article cannot be amended. This morning is really about debating the article. In keeping with tradition and out of respect for fellow members, I would ask that you limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Likewise, debate should be confined to the merits of the question. Vermont law prohibits consideration of matters that have not been warned. We will have an opportunity next week to talk about many other different town meeting or town related matters. Please raise your hand to be recognized, and when recognized, you should give your name. Speak directly into one of the microphones so that viewers at home can hear your questions and your comments. At this point, the chair would call upon Mr. Gartenstein for a preliminary motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the following persons be authorized to sit in the reserved section with the Select Board: Town Manager Peter Elwell, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland, Town Attorney Robert Fisher, Police Chief Michael Fitzgerald, Captain Mark Carrigan, Fire Chief Michael Bukasi, Assistant Fire Chief Peter Lynch, Town Assessor Russ Rice.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following persons be authorized to sit in the reserve section with the Select Board. Town Manager Peter Elwell, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland, Town Attorney Robert Fisher, Police Chief Michael Fitzgerald, Captain Mark Kerrigan, Fire Chief Mike Nicosi, Assistant Fire Chief Peter Lynch, and Town Assessor Russ Rice. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise or raise your hand. You may be seated. Any opposed? And the named town representatives may join the meeting. Chair recognizes Ms. O'Connor for a preliminary motion.
Thank you. I move that the electronic media be permitted to remain in the reserved section.
Is there a second? It has been moved that the electronic media be permitted to remain in the reserved section. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. Opposed, please rise. And you have approved the preliminary motion number 2. Now we move to the principal article, Article 1. Shall an amount not to exceed $4,500,000 of the proceeds of bonds authorized at the October 20th, 2012 special representative town meeting of the town of Brattleboro be expended for the purpose of purchasing land and buildings at 62 Black Mtn Road, Brattleboro, Vermont, and renovating said lands and building into the town of Brattleboro Police Station instead of constructing the police station renovations at the Brattleboro Municipal Center as authorized at said special representative town meeting. Now, voting on this article is to be done by Australian Ballot. And for the purpose of providing a preliminary explanation of this proposal, the chair would recognize Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Like many of us, I was skeptical when the proposal was first made to move the police station up to Putney Road. Over the course of the last year and a half, I've heard quite a bit of information about the merits of that proposal, and I voted with the majority of the select board this fall to recommend to town meeting that we move the police station to Putney Road rather than moving forward with construction plans at the municipal center. And I'd like to explain why. The idea, the plan to move police up to Putney Road was first presented in public, as I recall, in the summer of 2014 after the budget was rejected at referendum, and we had to rewrite the budget for passage in the spring of 2014 at a second town meeting. That proposal came from the police department itself and from the Police Fire Facilities Renovation Committee that Select Board had appointed with the goal of assisting us in doing the best possible job in doing the construction. And I want to give the names of those people who are on the Police Fire Facilities Committee who endorsed the move in the first instance, because I think they really represent a cross-section of people in town who responsibly looked at the project and made recommendations about what was most cost-effective and the best interest of the town. And I want to thank them for their work. Robin Sweetapple, Steve Phillips, Tony Farnham, Eli Gould, Dave Emery, Prudence McKinney, Phil Chapman, Catherine Dowd, and John Allen. Now, we could make a go of it renovating the police station at the municipal center, and I initially was skeptical about staying there at the municipal center, moving up to Putney Road, I'm sorry, for a number of reasons. I'm firmly committed to the vitality of downtown Brattleboro. It's our center, it's our hub, and we want to maintain the strength of the downtown area. Accessibility was a concern for me, and people being able to have a presence for the police station downtown in the village center where the most activity happens was an important value for me. I also had concerns about uncertainty about what would happen to the municipal center should the police move up to Putney Road. There are, however, substantial problems with the municipal center serving as the police station. The space just isn't optimally suited in the municipal center for the police station. The renovations that are planned, if we do the work at the municipal center, would involve a police station that's on 3 floors. Could have been 2 floors with a much, much bigger addition, but presently it would be 3 floors on the south side of the building, basement, first and second floor. It is not an optimal workflow situation, particularly if we're spending $5 million to do the work. There are other problems with that space as well. Storage, long-term storage of evidence and paperwork is not going to be optimal at the municipal center, and all equipment still won't fit into that area. There are vehicles and heavy-duty equipment that the police department uses that is scattered all over town at present. And the parking facilities at the municipal center already are challenging. The turning movements create dangerous situations up there, and we would have to eliminate parking in order to build the addition into the municipal center, besides which the addition is not a particularly pretty thing. There are benefits to moving up to Putney Road. First, there were concerns about the provision of services from Putney Road to the entirety of town. But as the police department points out, services are provided from officers who are on patrol. So the people who respond to calls in the community are on the road as a general matter. Officers are on the road in 3 sectors, and that's where they respond to reports of criminal activity in the community. In addition, there's enough space up on Putney Road to have all of the equipment and to design a workflow and a space that's going to accommodate the police department in a way that's optimal for their needs. Ultimately, based upon what's been presented by the police department, what's been reviewed and presented to us by the town manager, and what the Police Fire Facilities Committee recommended, was that the optimal place at this point, given our constraints, is to have the police department up in the space on Putney Road. And we searched through a range of different available or potentially available properties, and the property on which we have an option on Black Mtn Road would appear to be the best one that's possible. Now, there are a number of issues that have been raised over time, continuing concerns about moving up to Putney Road. and I think I can classify them in 3 ways based upon what we talked about 10 days ago at the informational meeting. I'll break them down into access, the town being a commercial landlord, and finances. Probably won't address them in that order. First, in terms of the town being a commercial landlord, we've heard concern and reluctance for the town to be buying commercial property. First off, the town already owns commercial property. We rent out space in the parking garage. It is not our goal as a municipality to become a commercial landlord. However, sometimes the needs of the town shift and change such that we need to consider whether the current facilities meet our needs. Now, if you're somebody who is just dead set against the town owning commercial real estate, or if you believe that it's really important to protect income streams that commercial landlords are earning from having commercial property and renting it out, you may not vote or even consider moving the police station up to Putney Road. But if you're balancing the various issues, what I would suggest to you is that we need to consider whether this is the best operational alternative for the police department. And in fact, what I would suggest to you is that it's really an opportunity for reuse of the municipal center in a way that will continue its purpose going forward. And we have in the last 10 days received permission from 2 of the entities that have expressed interest in using the space in the municipal center to say who they are. And so we've had communications from the state of Vermont and the Brattleboro Housing Authority who are interested in the possibility of moving into the space in the municipal center. Those would be governmental partnerships that would continue the core mission and be fully synergistic with the town's activities. Now, we can't enter into commitments yet because we don't know if the station's moving up to Putney Road. But those are real opportunities for the town, and they would generate real income, rental income going forward. In terms of finances, it will cost $4.1 million to do the work on Putney Road to create the police station up there. It would be about $5.1 million to do the work at the municipal center. That's $1 million savings in capital costs. But while we were doing our investigation, we needed to look at whether there were offsetting costs. And there are offsetting costs because it costs money to run the building on Putney Road. Ultimately, balancing out all those costs, moving up to Putney Road and staying downtown are pretty much a wash without considering the rental income that we would get at the municipal center. And if we get tenants into the municipal center, we're likely going to be earning in the range of $60,000 a year, approximately, in rental income up the municipal center, which will be to the benefit of the town going forward. Then, the final issue has to do with access to the police station downtown. Now, for my day job, I'm a prosecutor, and as we were talking a week ago Wednesday, I was listening to people ask questions about access to the police station. I started thinking to myself, do people really walk into the police station to report emergency criminal activity? Because I've been prosecuting for 12 years, and I can't remember a single case where somebody walked in an emergency situation. Sometimes people go to the police station to report criminal activity. Usually it's driving in. And we have a system, it's called Spillman, that tracks how all reports come in. And I asked the police chief, thank you, Peter. I asked the police chief to go back and pull the last year's worth of data about how people report matters to the police department. It's called punching a case. So over the course of January 1, 2015 to March 7, 2016, 12,253 calls for service, cases were punched. And of those, 559 were qualified as walk-in. That means people came into the PD to report them, but only 59 of them were criminal activity, and none of them were emergency criminal activity. I would suggest that almost all those people drove to the PD to report what happened rather than walking in. And the reason I say that, at least in part, is that a series of those reports, besides the 59 for crimes, were 66 of them for vehicle identification numbers. There were non-investigative accidents, that be in car crashes, where it appears that people drove into the PD to say what had happened, 89 of those, 10 animal problems, and other matters, and that's included in the data that Mr. Elwell circulated to all town meeting members, I think it was Thursday. So people do walk into the PD, but I'd respectfully suggest that the walk-ins at the PD aren't really a reason to keep the PD downtown, because I think they're driving to the parking lot, most people. Now we do have check-ins, daily check-in at the police department for court-related matters, but the daily check-in is a matter that supports the court system for the county as a whole, and even many of those people drive to the PD in order to check in. I'm not going to say that going up to Putney Road is the perfect alternative. I remain to have some concerns. I remain with some concerns about that move. But based upon all of that information, I voted with the majority in the fall, late fall, to recommend the alternative of reallocating money from the initial bond that would have done the police work at the municipal center in order to do the work up at Putney Road. And I did that because I think that it's in the best interest of the town, even though it's not a perfect alternative. I think I spoke longer than 5 minutes. I apologize. Thanks for listening.
Is there further discussion with regard to the article? Mr. Elwell?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to add two quick things related to the access that the Select Board Chair spoke to just a moment ago. While we find the data that the Chief prepared this week compelling, it doesn't completely speak to it. I think it's extremely reassuring in terms of the need of the community to have the police station downtown in order to aid in emergency response. It settles that question, I believe. But the other issue that has been raised about access is the variety of non-emergency reasons why people visit the police station, and the fact that it's a long walk for people who would be in the downtown area and would otherwise walk to the municipal center. It's a long walk up to Black Mtn Road, and that's true. And in the weighing of the pros and cons that we've had to weigh in order to come to this recommendation, that long walk is a downside to weigh against all of the upsides. But I think it's important to note two things that counterbalance that. One is we were asked whether or not, at the information meeting, we were asked whether or not it was possible for the bus system to identify as one of the stops on its route the Black Mtn Road site. And when we checked on that to ask if they would accommodate us that way, they said we already go by the building 6 times a day. They go up to SIT. The Putney Road route goes up to SIT and does a loop there and comes back down to Putney Road. So there is plenty of bus access to the proposed facility. And the related concern was Sometimes people just have a moment when they're not feeling safe. It's not that they have an actual emergency or something they need to report, but they need the sense of security that can be provided by going to a public building, the police station, or some other place that is occupied 24/7 where they can feel protected. And to the degree that such a safe refuge is occasionally needed in our downtown area, it has existed for a long time and will continue to exist at the Central Fire Station, where we have firefighters 24/7. So anybody, and we can promote that more. It's always been true that we would welcome anyone who showed up at the door at the fire station, welcome them inside and help them feel secure and address whatever is their concern at that moment, call for the police to come and assist if necessary. It's always been true that we would do that. We've never promoted that particularly. And as part of implementing this plan, if it is approved, we certainly would promote that more to the community as a place for folks at any time of the day or night to go if they have a need to feel protected by their local government.
This matter is sponsored by the Select Board, and although I want to try to remind everyone to stay within the 5-minute limitation, I will give a little bit of latitude here since it does require some explanation. Is there anyone else on the Select Board that wished, Ms. O'Connor?
I'm going to promise to keep this just to a couple minutes. There's been reference to there wasn't consensus on the board, so I'm going to admit that I was the one that voted against moving it up to Putney Road, and I'll just very quickly tell you why. We have a building that we have to put money into anyway, whether we are there or whether we aren't there. If we're going to have tenants in a building, we still have to fix it. I also don't like the idea of moving one of our essential services out to a part of the town into a building where even if you drive by, you can't see it. And I know people have said to me, well, nobody knows that the police station's in the municipal center. I don't believe that. People know that the police station's in the municipal center. You walk by and you see police cars. I also don't like moving the police station out to a place that you can't walk to. And I know people are saying, well, it doesn't matter, people don't walk in anyway. To me, that's sort of a big deal. There's not a sidewalk that goes up that road. I think it changes the culture of the town, it changes the culture, and it could be a long-term change. Once we move, we know we're not moving back. So those are the basic concerns I have. I respect the police department. I respect the police officers. I want them to have a good facility. I still think that it can be done at the municipal center. And again, I'm not an expert on how you build things, but I'm not convinced that it should move. And I kept an open mind through this whole thing, but I'm still really not convinced that we should take an essential service, move it. It changes the culture of the downtown, it changes the culture of the town, and we have a building that we still need to put money into. So for those reasons and some others that were stated at the informational meeting, I voted not to move.
Yes. Again, with deference to the Select Board, they are the group that is sponsoring the article. The chair will recognize Ms. McCumber.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am in favor of moving the police facility to Putney Road. I also really want to acknowledge and respect the process that we as the Select Board have had with one another in terms of our always respectful argument and deliberation and consideration of this critical issue for our community. I think for me, although I was inclined toward the move from the very beginning, being somewhat familiar with the facility, the decision was made absolutely in me when I recently toured the police department and saw for myself the degree of disrepair and the problems that arise from having a department that is spread out in 3 floors. I, in my day job, rely heavily on the excellent work of the Brattleboro Police Department. And when I think about efficiency and I think about what our community needs and deserves in terms of response, I believe it's critical to have a department that is organized and arranged in a way that allows for the utmost efficiency in terms of communication. And the possibility exists that with the move to Putney Road, our department can be organized in a way that really increases that efficiency. That, to me, seems like a very good thing. The nature of our department is one where, in my daily walks up and down Main Street, I see officers walking the beat, I see officers in their cruisers. I am not concerned about the response time to any critical matter being delayed by a move to Putney Road or Black Mountain Road. If I were worried about that, I would not be in favor of this move. But I think those of us who work closely with the department are aware that officers are often not in the municipal building. They're doing their work. They're talking with the residents of this community. They're all over town, and that's where we want them. So what I feel really good about is that this decision is yours to make today, that we have done our due diligence, I think, to think very, very carefully about the pros and cons, to think about the cost to each of us. It's a shared burden. It's a sacred responsibility to create an environment where the town is protected and supported by the department. And I believe that, we will, together we will figure out what needs to happen. But I am fully in support of the move. Thank you.
Discussion. Ms. Dowd.
Good morning. David, thank you for giving the Police Fire Committee recognition for the work we did for 2 years. What I wanted to say this morning, and I have notes, so I'll be a condensed version, is thank you for mentioning all the members. I also want to tell you that John Allen attended those meetings, David Scholes was in those meetings, the fire chief, the police chiefs, the assistant chiefs, Patrick Moreland before Mr. Elwell came. It was in depth. We interviewed architects, engineers, we worked with them, we studied blueprints. Now, anybody that's ever built anything, you look at a blueprint, it looks so easy because it's on paper and you can put it anywhere. But when you start looking at what the police need and how you save money, the only thing we could keep coming back to after we took out almost everything was square footage. Square footage drives costs. So they kept looking at how do you take the square footage out? And once we kept making things get smaller and smaller, you start saying, what are we getting back for this money? Where are we going to put it on that tight lot? So when we and all of us said, all these experts around us, tell us what 16,000 square feet look like in a size building. Because in our municipal center, what happens is most of our police department's invisible. We come into the police department, we see the public front window, whatever we call that. I call it dispatch, but I know it's not. But if we wanted to go in and talk to somebody, there's a glass window, we come up. That's all we see except our cruisers and our officers in uniform. So you don't get a good idea of what they're using for space and what they need. So what's interesting is 16,000 square feet is 160 feet by 100 feet on one level. Well, you start looking at how big that is, where would it be? How many cars do we want to park for cruisers, employees, and all of our rescue equipment? 50 plus spaces or more would be comfortable for turning radiuses. Where do you get a lot that size? 1.5 to 2 acres. You can look at something like that, any of us as lay people, and say, wait a minute, that doesn't exist at exit 1, 2, it exists on Putney Road. So we kept thinking, okay, what happens if we move to Putney Road? We looked at other buildings that would need to be torn down, redone. The Black Mountain Road wasn't quite for sale back then. So what I want to tell you was, I'm not a fireman or a policeman, and we're just on the police section right now. But I found myself looking at other towns. Where did they put their police departments? I mean, hopefully I'm not a person that goes to the police department. I love these guys, but I don't want to really see them. How do I say this? You know, God bless every one of you. And if I had a call to have help from police, you betcha. But that's not the point today. The point today is when I drove to other surrounding towns to say, where do they put their police department? If I really needed to visit a police department, where would that be? You start looking at Keene, and you go to Bellows Falls, you go to Northampton, you go to Hadley, just our periphery, Keene. They aren't on Main Street. They're not in walking distance. I live in West Brattleboro. I'm not going to walk to the police department. So what I found was the reason they were on these peripheries of town was access, parking, and the size of the building. You drive around and you see these buildings as a standalone facility. You start getting a sense of what a police department needs to do their work. It's like we see a fire department and say it's got 2 bays, 3 bays, 9 bays. Oh, wow. But a police department that's embedded in the municipal center is invisible. So let me just tell you, the police fire committee did so much hard work. We're the ones that, you're right, brought the proposal to the selectmen and said, we need to move. That's how we do the best job for the town. We were asked to look at everything. We looked at the 3rd floor of the library. Could we add on to the parking garage? Could we put a central fire combination police? Could we do a West Brattleboro police? And all the ramifications are the same. We don't have enough parking. We don't have enough square footage. I don't want to say any more than that because we've said it and said it and said it. But what I love about the Black Mtn Road property is it gives us more than ample space. It's a 50-year plan, which we said we were committed to. I have notes so I can be condensed. We've got ample parking for the cruisers, employees, visitors in the sense of meetings, or if I wanted to go visit there, or any of us wanted to visit there. All of our rescue equipment can go there. We have an easy, secure access when we build a sally port, which is more than needed. We can't really do that in municipal lot. Folks, if you walk around that addition and you start putting on that sally port, access to the library, handicap parking for the library, it just doesn't work. And then the cost savings on top of the utility of that building is $1 million. That's what that committee was charged for. So let me just double check that I've asked and told you everything I wanted to say. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was, somebody said, what happens if the reformer doesn't renew its lease? Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But wouldn't it be great to have a building that's not so shoehorned and so small that we don't have opportunity in the future? I don't know what policing looks like in the future. Maybe we'll all have hovercrafts and drones. I don't know. But I still think we'll always have people. I think we'll always have new ways of doing community policing and community protection. It's not all about crime. It's all about community service and some other things. So what if the reformer didn't renew its lease? Then what we could have is square footage for our own polling place. We could have a place to meet like this that's not in the school building. We have lots of opportunity. So I think that's all I wanted to say, except we have an old-fashioned Yankee saying in New England, don't we? It says, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. You know, I've heard that so many times, and I think we've used up the municipal center. I think we've worn it out for the police department. Have we made it do? You betcha. These guys and ladies have done huge, and we can't do without it. It's time for us to move. And I just also want to say that I've been a town meeting member since 1984. So have we had a decades-long debate? Yes, I've been in this room for a lot of it. I'm a taxpayer. I wear a town lister hat. And as a fire police committee member, I'm in favor of 62 Black Mtn Road. And I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work. Thank you.
Further debate. Mr. Kasnitz.
I'm Daniel Kasnitz, District 1, and thank you very much, folks. I think Mr. Gardenstein is being quite kind to say the municipal center is not optimal. And I think that the focus here, that police is indeed an essential service. And while there are many side issues, given that the two choices are at worst revenue neutral, I believe that even a cursory examination of the function of the two buildings for the police has to come clearly down on the side of a far, far better facility on Black Mtn Road, far more effective for our police force, and that is the priority. All of the other issues, while valuable to look at, are indeed secondary if our goal is the best operation of our police essential service. And I suggest that this day that is indeed our priority.
For the debate, Mr. Carvill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When I first heard of this, I'm against moving up to Putney Road. I don't like it. I'd like to speak about the soft, the non-money reasons. I remember back, I don't know how many years ago it was, Corky, that you and the selectmen worked hard to get the state office building to stay downtown, to keep the spirit of the downtown. Well, I'm maybe one of the few people here who can say, as far as moving to Putney Road, been there, done that. I worked downtown for the Reformer for 10 years. We could go out in the morning and get coffee at the Dutch Bake Shop or have lunch at the Common Ground or the Riverview Diner, and we had to move. And there were good reasons we can talk about later. We moved to Putney Road, and we were all afraid that we'd lose touch with the town, and maybe to some degree we did, but when I covered the selectmen, I didn't cover the selectmen from Putney Road or from Main Street. I covered the selectmen by going to the selectmen's meetings. And Bruce covered the school board by going to the school board meetings. Just the same way that the police today go out and are out, we were out in the town. We had to do our typing at Putney Road, but we were out in the town. The question comes down to how well our police can function. And I can tell you that when we moved from a multi-story facility on Main Street to Putney Road, all on one level, the Reformer did work better. We were all in one room. We could speak to each other more easily. We didn't have to run around and up and down stairs, and it made sense. It made sense for us to be there, and I think in the same way it makes sense for the police department to be there. I was opposed to this when I first heard about it, but I've been convinced, based both on what I've heard and on my own experience, that the town will be better off with the police department up on Black Mtn Road. Thank you. Sorry, I thought I said so. George Carvill, District 1.
All the way in the back.
Cassandra, Holloway, District 3. So I had really wanted to think about the tax increase. I recently moved to Brattleboro. I had lived here for 10 years, and now I live on High Street. But I still own a home in Westminster, so even though I'm not a homeowner here currently, I am a homeowner, so I know what it feels like when you're kind of struggling to make ends meet, and then you see your tax potentially increasing. So I asked Russell, our tax assessor, for the average tax assessment for a single home property tax assessment to kind of get a real breakdown to what people are going to be paying. And the average is $220,000. Obviously, if somebody has a condo or a mobile home, it goes down significantly less. So for somebody who has a $220,000 home average, that's about $9.50 a month that you're seeing in an increase in your taxes. And that $9.50 a month will ensure effective and efficient services from the departments who are providing our emergency management and our public safety to everyone in this room and everyone in this community. It's also ensuring that our vulnerable victims and our suspects that are in the police department, and these suspects, a lot of them are dealing with substance abuse, mental health issues, desperation, maybe homelessness. It's ensuring them a safe and humane experience in an environment. I have seen many people crying on that bench by the lobby because they have nowhere to go, and the police department can't put them somewhere so they can struggle with their trauma in a safe place, and that, to me, is heartbreaking. So for $9.50, it will ensure they have a place to go. It will also ensure that these hardworking men and women who care for us so much have a safe and healthy environment, and dare I say, a place of well-being and high morale that they don't have right now in the environment that they have. So just think about that when you are thinking about your tax increases. And I did want to ask somebody, I think Peter might speak to this, about who actually is going to be, there's people who are also income sensitive, and I wanted that to be addressed, and I wanted to be explained in a way that I don't want to be inaccurate. And a lot of people are concerned about, if somebody doesn't have to pay an increase in taxes because of income sensitivity, who's going to pay that is kind of a lot of times what people will say. So I just want you to speak to that, Peter.
The town manager is interrogated if he wishes to be.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And full disclosure to the body, I'm not an expert on the income sensitivity rules, but Cassandra gave me a heads up yesterday she'd be asking this question, so I did some research and learned some things, which is that up to $97,000 of annual household income, people are eligible for some level of tax relief from the state of Vermont. And there's a sliding scale, very complicated formula that relates to how much tax relief an individual gets. It is mostly geared towards the education tax, but it does affect municipal tax as well. Below $47,000 a year of annual household income, there's actually something they call a circuit breaker tax cap, which means that taxes, both the combined tax of education and municipal, is absolutely capped. The upshot of that for us as it relates to the tax impact of this project, this proposal, is 1/3, and this applies to homesteaded property throughout the state. So 1/3 of the homesteaded property in Brattleboro is owned by households that are actually where the circuit breaker is applicable. And so they've already reached their maximum based on the taxes that we collect for all the operating expenses of the town and the other debt service that we have. And so there wouldn't be a tax increase for those individuals. 2/3 in total of the homesteaded property in town is eligible for some form of, some amount of tax relief under the income sensitivity formula. And for those households that are eligible, either in part or in whole, the offsetting loss of revenue that would otherwise affect the town is paid through a reimbursement from the state of Vermont. So we create a tax rate that's applicable to all the property. We collect the taxes from everybody who isn't eligible for the income sensitivity protection. And the gap there is actually paid by the state of Vermont to the town. So that's the answer to income sensitivity.
People who would be paying, if they'd be paying it in state tax, not in town tax, if they were, if that kind of the state reimbursing is kind of coming from all of Vermont state taxpayers.
Right.
So it's not specific to this town.
Please.
So that stands in contrast, for instance, to when we exempt a property locally from paying taxes, where then the rest of the local taxpayers pick up the slack for that. Under the income sensitivity rules, it means all of the taxpayers in Vermont are paying into a fund from which eligible municipalities receive a reimbursement, and Brattleboro is an eligible municipality.
I just have one last quick question. I don't know if I took up my 5, but I just wanted Chief Fitzgerald, if possible, speak to that concern. And I know it got brought up this morning, but just the concern of a lot of people feel there needs to be more presence downtown, and there's concern for less. And I just kind of wanted you just to speak a little more to that. And thank you.
The chief is interrogated on that issue?
As the to the presence of downtown. We don't patrol downtown because the municipal center's downtown. We patrol downtown because that's good police strategy. And we will be on bicycles because that's good police strategy. It doesn't matter where the police department's at. That strategy is not going to change. That philosophy of us interacting with the community is not going to change. And to some of the questions out there that might be concerning with the bike patrol, the bikes don't leave the police department on bikes. They have a rack they put on the back of the cruisers, they put the bike on the rack, and those officers are assigned a cruiser because they may have to go throughout anywhere in town during their shift, even though they may be on a bike. So if they're in the downtown area or up around the high school or Hannaford's area riding their bike and they get a call, they're going to take the bike, put it back on the rack on the cruiser, and then take the cruiser. It's not like they're going to be riding a bike from Hannaford's to Cumberland's. It's just not going to happen. So, those tactics aren't going to change no matter where the location of the police department is. That's just good community policing, and that's why we do it, not because we're close to downtown.
Thank you for allowing me to interrogate you.
Further debate, further questions. The gentleman way over here on the left side. Yes, sir.
Dennis Newman, District 3. I'm not particularly concerned about the culture of the town, and I think the police department would do a good job in either location. What the main concern to me is financial, and it's reported in the handout that we would save $1 million by moving to Black Mtn Road. But I'm not sure that's right. I'm referring to something Kate O'Connor said, that we have to rehabilitate the municipal building anyway. We have to take care of the mold and, I don't know, other structural or health and safety considerations. So the savings might be substantially less than $1 million. I would like someone to speak to that. And also, I read in the packet near the end that staying in downtown is only good for a 20-year period. And I'm not sure what would happen beyond that. But Black Mtn Road would look good beyond a 20-year period. I wonder if you could speak to that also.
Is there someone among the administration that could address Mr. Newman's question? Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'm going to address the second part first because I think we've created some confusion, so I apologize for that. There isn't a distinction between the durability of what would be done at the municipal center in the full scope of work versus the durability of what we're proposing to do at Black Mtn Road. So in either case, what we've tried to say in the documents is we wouldn't expect to have to do any substantive work at these locations for at least 20 years. Frankly, the expectation is that given the other needs of the community and the financial wherewithal that we have, while we might start to identify some needs 20 years out, it's probably going to be much longer before we look at any kind of work of, any significant magnitude at either site for the police facility going forward. So we expect that the investment that we would be making as a community now will last for much longer than 20 years, but the assurance we're making is that you shouldn't expect to be asked to do anything more significant at these facilities during that period of time. If that's equal. Where we did have some earlier in the discussion, back in the fall and into the winter, before the decision that the select board made to make a recommendation to town meeting, we did have some discussion of doing less than the full amount of needed work at this time. And in those scenarios, we did caution that wouldn't, at the municipal center, if we just did some of the work but not all of the work that needs to be done, that wouldn't be a 20-year solution. So I apologize if we created some confusion around that. On the question of whether or not there's a real $1 million savings, there is a real $1 million savings in the capital cost from one project to the other in the weighing of the pros and cons for what's going to be best for the community on this decision that has been long studied and long postponed. In the supplemental material that we sent out on Thursday evening, and for anybody who didn't receive it and didn't pick up a copy on the back table this morning, there are copies on the back table that try to lay it out in a different form to correct confusion that has existed about the savings. The chairman said it really well this morning in his opening remarks. The capital cost savings is real. There's additional operating cost for having an additional facility. We think that that's okay as long as that doesn't create a substantial additional burden to the community, and we think that it won't. We've analyzed that very thoroughly, and we've come out to that conclusion that it's about a wash when you look at the additional operating cost for Black Mtn Road versus the savings that it represents in terms of the capital investment. Which brings us back to the municipal center. There is indeed work that's going to have to be done at the municipal center. But the mold remediation, for instance, is a minor expense in the grand scheme of the whole program. So in terms of health and safety issues that would need to be addressed in the near term, those are not anything of the magnitude of what we're talking about in terms of upgrading facilities to function as 21st century public safety facilities. That is more on the scale of significant level maintenance work that needs to be done, and that will need to be done. But as far as going forward for any kind of a more significant project at the municipal center that might actually be viewed as a restoration as opposed to just significant maintenance work, that's where the part of the discussion and the analysis and the materials that we've presented to you focuses on the potential for revenue from governmental partners. So we don't want to go out and become real estate holders and generate commercial activity in the municipal center. That's not the goal here, and that's not our expectation of what would occur. We think that whether it is the state of Vermont or whether it is the housing authority locally or whether it is some other entity or group of entities, there's a real opportunity for us to reinforce the governmental center aspect, the public service aspect of this cluster of facilities that already exist there with the municipal center and the library and the courthouse and the state office building, that we can reinforce that. And if we're able to reinforce it, and we're confident that we will be based on the communication we've had with the two significant public entities that we've named, if we're able to do that in partnership with other governmental organizations, it'll actually make it more affordable for us in the long haul to do some longer-term upgrade of the municipal center. But there is no plan, even conceptual, for that at this time. What we have in front of you today is a plan that we think is viable, the most cost-effective of the ones that we've looked at, which is a lot. It's exhaustive in terms of looking at other alternatives, in order to address these long-deferred needs for the police and fire departments.
Further debate. Mr. Corbeil.
This is Raphael, you better known as Mike Corbeil, District 2. I've been a representative here since it started. I was born and brought up here in the town of Brattleboro, the first white settlement in the state of Vermont. You know where that is?
I'm sorry, Mr. Corbeil.
I'm asking a question. Does anybody know where the first white settlement is in the state of Vermont? Or It was located on the west side of the Connecticut River at the little channel that goes from the Hunts Meadow to the Connecticut River. And that's where it's born. The stone is located at the bottom of Carvill Hill. Is there anybody here that has been a Brattleboro resident as early as 1950? Come on. There's a few. You don't remember all the things that happened in this town. Anyway, I want to say, let's get out of the 19th century of facilities and society services. We are now in the 21st century. Let's get into the 21st century of facilities and society's needs. And I say, if we move up to Black Mtn Road, we'll be entering into the 21st century. And it needs to be done. We do not have to have our police station in a municipal building. It is not practical. Pardon me, I got to put the notes down because I know what I want to say up here, but it won't come out here. I'm sorry. Anyway, the municipal center would cost $1 million more to put a police station here. And it would not meet all the needs for the police department to operate. Number one. That's a known fact. The committee has brought this all up. The former property will be remodeled and built to meet all the department needs. We will not lose any part of the services that our great police department and administration is providing. They have a really good schedule of how they police this town. I've had a lot of good results for the police department for anything that I had to bring to their attention. The police would not have to interrupt their time of their services, which puts them in a handicapped position during construction of the new facilities. I would ask this question. If they would remodel the municipal center for the police station, they would not be getting a good 21st century facility. And furthermore, how long would it take for them to construct this new facility at the municipal building? That's my question.
Is there a member, town manager, Mr. Elwell?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We don't have an actual construction schedule yet because there's additional planning and design work that'll need to be done once we know which project we're going to build. Our expectation is that it'll take several months to borrow the money and do that planning work and probably a year or so worth of construction at either location. But that's thumbnail at this point as opposed to a schedule.
Thank you, Peter. For one thing, during a construction service in the municipal parking lot, what kind of service is the police department going to give us? Because they have to move out of one side of the building, all the materials, all the stuff into, and they got to operate to the other side or the other two floors of the building during the construction period. This is going to be disrupting the services that the police can provide. And it's really going to ruin the morale of the company, of the department. And on top of that, that's going to be a lot of expense and time consuming of the officers or any people that has to move that section. This plan, as far as I see it, is the best plan that's been presented to us over 50 years. I was on the Board of Selectmen in 1972 to 1982. We've been through the same process. What to do with the police department? When the police department was down in the auditorium on Main Street, auditorium movie theater, 3 stories. The town clerk's office was down there. Barber Savings and Loan was started there with a Hadley Shumway. And the police department was here. I was a member of the youthful police department, and I used the shooting range down and underneath the auditorium to help practice my shooting. And so, and we were working, what, in the 19th century. And so then we moved it up to the high school, and we did the same thing. We put it in the municipal building, which it shouldn't have been done in the first place. They should have built a new police station at that time, but that's your say. So anyway, I am 100% for this movement to Putney Road. We will get a new building in 21st century facility, remodeled, rebuilt, and it will accommodate all the police services, all the equipment, everything that they need for us to operate a good operation. And I am 100% for this. And this plan should be a no-brainer for anybody here to say yes to this motion. And I would be 100% grateful for it. And the first thing I say, I believe that all the citizens of Brattleboro should commend the select board going back 50 years and the committees going back to 40 years for all the work that they did and all the information provided and the correct and wonderful information they provided. And there should be no brainer for us to say yes. Please.
Further debate. Ms. Bouboulis.
Thank you, Doura Bouboulis, District 3. Sticking to consistency. So I just want to thank Kate because I agree with everything that she said. Just want to add, I do have a real concern about accessibility and visibility. The visibility of the police department being right in the center of town, the visibility of the police officers being all around town, and I'm not talking about a police car. We've talked for years about wanting to get community policing in this town. We don't have it yet. We're getting closer, but we don't have it yet. I have a concern that if they move out to Black Mtn Road, they're actually going to have to increase the number of officers working on Black Mtn Road in order to do what I would love to have, which is what Northampton has, which is 24/7 visibility and accessibility of police officers around downtown. They're on foot constantly, anytime of day or night, you can see them. And that's what I want to see. From an accessibility standpoint, yeah, the bus goes up there 5 times a day. And perhaps somebody has to make their way down to the bus station. If they were just going downtown to the police station, they would only have to walk another 3 blocks. They have to wait for the bus. They have to sit on the bus for 20 minutes to half an hour to get out there. They do their business, and then they have to wait another hour and a half to get the bus back. That's if they're doing it during the business day 5 days a week, because it doesn't run every day, and it doesn't run at night. So, okay, so somebody has to take off a half a day work in order to go out and get the police report for their accident. It's a full service body here, the police department. It's not just about reporting crimes. And even in the statistics that were noted by the chair and in the book about people reporting crimes, 40% is a huge number. 40% of people who go on foot to do business at the police station. That's a big number. And that's not gonna, yeah, that's what it is in the book. It's 60% by car and 40%, 10% by bike, 30% by foot. I have real concerns about that, about people being able to get out to the police station. That I'm in a building where nobody can see it. It's not there. And I do want to take issue with the issue of the fire department being a safe haven. That is true. The fire department's a great place. There are a great bunch of people that work there. But I've been driving by and walking by that building at the Center Fire Station every day since I've lived in town, which is going on 18 years. And it's like a mausoleum. I walked by it yesterday at 6 o'clock and it was like a mausoleum. It doesn't look like there's any life in there. Now, part of that is the design of the building, because they're all upstairs in the back, and so you can't see there's lights on, you can't see there's people in the building. But that's, you know, that's an issue if people think that they're going to be able to find some place that's a safe haven, and I'm not. And then if there's a police call, if there's a fire call, then they have to find something to do with that person that has just come in for safe haven who, so then the police are going to probably have to be called anyway. So that's a concern. Another thing that hasn't been raised yet, the visibility is not just about the police being visible, to the public in need of police. It's about the police being visible so that people can see what it is that they're doing. That's a protection for everybody. It's not just a protection for the citizens, because the police need to know that if there's a perception that something's happening untoward, that people can see, no, that's not true. And people can come to their defense and say, hey, I see this happening all the time because I see what's going on at the police department. If it's out of Black Mtn Road, it's out of sight, out of mind. So that's a big concern to me too. I just want to say that there's a questionnaire in here that was put out to people. And it's an interesting questionnaire. It's got interesting results. But there's no real socioeconomic data on who the respondents are. And pretty much every question, it's kind of a push-pull. So I wanted to bring that up just because if people are using that to make their decision, just be wary, because I would have loved to see a question on the ballot this year. That was talked about, the select board meetings in the fall, and it didn't happen. And finally, I'm going to say, no matter what the decision is, this should go to a town-wide vote. The whole town should be able to vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rusty Sage, District 1. I wanted to bring up a couple of points in regards to what Ms. O'Connor said when she spoke. One of them was the cost of renovations to the municipal building and the cost of building a new facility. I think you're bringing up apples and oranges there. You're talking renovations to the building to bring it up to standard instead of adding a new police facility to it, adding a large add-on to it. I think a new building, yes, it's going to cost in the millions. Those renovations that you said will still have to be done to the municipal center, you're looking at a much smaller number. I couldn't guess at what it is. I'm not an engineer. But that's really an apples and oranges. Not to mention the fact that, as Mr. Corbeil said, if this was to go into the municipal building and renovate this building, you've got police officers there that are trying to do their jobs during these renovations. It's not only an inconvenience, it's not safe, I'm sure. Not as safe as it could be. Certainly not as safe as if we were going to a new building and they weren't around at that time. In regards to seeing the police department, you brought up that the visibility of the police department being right there downtown, and Ms. Bouboulis spoke to it as well. When I think about seeing the police department, I think about driving through the municipal building lot. I don't think about it when I'm driving down Main Street. I see nothing of the police station when I'm driving down Main Street. I don't see it when I'm driving down Grove Street. I see it when I'm driving through the lot. And if I'm going through the lot, I'm either going to the municipal building or to the police station, so I know it's there. With today's technology, if the police station moves to Black Mtn Road, people are going to know it's there. You're not going to see it from Putney Road, but again, you don't see it from Main Street as you drive down Main Street now. The spirit of downtown was brought up several times, and I agree. I love the spirit of downtown Brattleboro. But when I think of the spirit of downtown Brattleboro, I think of, as I walk through the municipal building, looking at the pictures of the 1940s, 50s, 60s hanging on the wall. That's what I think of when I think of the spirit of downtown Brattleboro, not the police station sitting downtown as opposed to Putney Road. I don't think that's going to change the spirit of downtown Brattleboro. You're still going to have the shops, you're still going to have the history, you're still going to have the people. That's not going to change. It's been brought up a number of times, the downtown presence. Nobody's brought up, in regards to presence, the fact that right now, if somebody that lives in the north end of Brattleboro has to go to the police station, they have to travel to downtown. It's always the people downtown have to travel to the north end. So to me, it's an even trade-off. You're making it more accessible to people closer there to walk to. The people downtown have to drive. I live in West Brattleboro, so I've got to drive to the police station, the municipal center. If I need to go there, that's not going to change. So let's not forget that this town has people in the north end of Brattleboro that may have need of the services of the police department as well. The visibility of the police has been brought up. I see the police department all the time walking downtown. As the chief said, he's not going to change that. That's good policing, and I applaud that. Maybe some of the people that are talking about that presence aren't paying attention to the police department when they have members walking downtown. Maybe it's because they don't need them at the time. I know most of the members on the police department, and I see them and I say hi to them when I see them walking. So I do see that presence downtown. As far as walk-ins, I've heard a number of people as I've talked throughout the town and in my district. What about the people that have to go to the police station and check in? What about the people that have a court order to go and check in with the police? And now they've got to go to Putney Road or find a bus or a ride to Putney Road. Well, I want to know, and maybe somebody can answer this question for me, in what world it is that we live where the convenience of somebody who has made a conscious choice to break the law and have that requirement is a priority over the safety of the police department that we have the responsibility to take care of. Thank you.
Is there someone from the administration that would like to respond to Mr. Sage's question, Mr. Gartenstein?
A number of people have inquired about what it's going to cost to do necessary renovations at the municipal center, separate and apart from the police department work. So I'd like to address that briefly. The town was cited for life safety code violations 2 or 3 years ago, and we've entered into an agreement with the Department of Public Safety with respect to phased repairs in 3 different areas at the municipal center. First, we had to upgrade the fire alarm system. That was already completed last year at a cost of approximately $60,000. Second, we need to upgrade and improve the sprinkler system, and I don't have those figures right here with me, but my recollection is that that's about $120,000, and that's already in this year's budget. There's a third area of life safety repairs that need to be completed in order for the municipal center to be in compliance with Department of Public Safety requirements, and that's to fill in gaps where fire can move and put in fire-rated doors and the like. And again, I don't have the figures right here, but my recollection is that's about $250,000 more. So the total approximately, this is off the top of my head, for necessary life safety work at the municipal center in order to comply with Department of Public Safety requirements is between $400,000 and $500,000. Some of it's already been expended, some of it is already committed, and we have other money left over from what we voted to authorize last year when we put $485,000 from the surplus to do capital work available to do a chunk of that work going forward. My recollection is that the mold remediation in the basement is in the $55,000, $60,000 range as well. But again, that's separate and apart from the work to renovate the municipal center to put the PD up to 21st century standards.
Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to say that back in 2012, when I was a member of the board, one of the principal motivations that made me support moving ahead with the police fire project was the matter of safety within the public safety services. I think it would be ironic if we were to sacrifice the safety of the public safety personnel by turning down this opportunity to move out onto the Putney Road property. And I'm wondering if the chief of police could just review with us the 6 key criteria that were used from his perspective to advocate for the Putney Road property as opposed to remaining in the police department. As I recall, the current location would meet 4 of those key criteria, whereas the property on Black Mtn Road off Putney Road would meet all 6 of what were considered to be key criteria.
Chief Fitzgerald, if you would.
If you would go in your handouts on page 64 is the police department major needs that Mr. Chapman was referring to. When we set out on the new facility, and once again, location does not play a role in this. We sat down and looked at what we have and what some of our major needs were for a facility. And the first one, to secure, to handle transported prisoners. That would be met at either location. Moving the cell block from the basement level. Okay, that was a major need. That also would be, that need would be met on either location. Provide separate locker rooms for male and female officers. That would be met at both locations. And a separate entrance for central dispatch for the citizens. That would also be met. Each one of those needs were discussed at great length on why they were needs. The 2 that would not be met or met fully would be the provide secure and dry area for long-term storage of records and evidence. Currently at the municipal center, there's just not the room to store all the evidence and records that we currently have. And our option to keep those is not an option. It's by statute. It's a law. We have to keep those records for a certain period of time. And some evidence and records we're mandated to keep indefinitely. So there is no option there. Another thing that won't be met at the municipal center is the efficiency and workflow. By staying at the municipal center, as was discussed by Mr. Gardenstein earlier, you're on 3 floors. And to work to the flow of how a police department works, as Mr. Corbeil was saying earlier, everything is a flow. It works hand in hand. We're not silos in the police department. There's not one section of a police department that is not affected by the other when we're dealing with emergencies or arrests. And to put one entity on the 3rd floor and one on the bottom floor, you're greatly affecting the efficiency and the time flow of how they're interacting. Our goal is to get people out into the street, out into the community, not have them spend more time in the police department going up and down flights of stairs. Go in there, get what you have to do, make the coordination and collaboration that you have to with whatever division you have, and then get back out on the road. So the 2 that would not be met at the municipal center is our storage. Once again, it was also talked about how we have gear separated in 3 different spots throughout town. That's not going to happen at the municipal center. It would up at Black Mtn Road. So the storage of our equipment and evidence and records would be difficult at the municipal center, and also the flow.
Now, 10 o'clock, the polls are officially open as of now. I think this might be an opportune moment. There's still quite a few people who would like to be heard, and I think this would be a good opportunity just to take a 10-minute recess. So let's just be back, if you don't mind, in 10 minutes. We have a number of people who still want to be heard. We have a number of people that still have questions and comments, and I want to afford all of those people an opportunity to do so. So if the meeting can please come to order. And I see Mr. Barber's hand up immediately, and so the chair will recognize Mr. Barber.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. I perhaps see this as a little bit different from some people. I see this as voting on solving 2 problems. The first one is the police department's problem. And the second, which is a problem we can't solve right away, is the municipal center's problem. And I'm struck by what would one do when faced with 2 problems to provide the worst possible environment for the solution of those 2 problems. And it seems to me that the worst possible approach would be to take the 2 problems and crunch them together and then say, now we're going to solve them. Oh, wait a minute. I suddenly realized they are crunched together. My belief is that the way to solve the police department problem is to gently move them out of the municipal center to Black Mtn Road, where they can go ahead and, with room to spare, solve their problems. That would leave the municipal center's problems as a separate thing that's going to be solved at a separate time with different monies probably, and I would hope some state money if the state is interested in renting and so forth. I can't believe that there aren't grants out there. So by getting the police department unstuck from the municipal center's problem, I think we really go a long way. Thank you.
Further debate and questions? Yes, the woman right here. No, yes, ma'am, you. Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brandie Starr, and I'm with District 1. I am in favor of moving, but it's not because I think it's a perfect solution, but I think it's the solution that we have. I think the building is in rough shape at the municipal center, and I think it's demoralizing to ask the people that protect us to work there anymore. I think there's lots and lots of room on Black Mtn Road, and I think that's the right thing to do. I've seen the movie The Money Pit. I've seen Funny Farm, and also my all-time favorite is Baby Boom. Those movies have one thing in common. When you try to fix old things, you're always surprised, and it's never in a good way. Having said that, I have concerns. What other capital needs are going to come up while we're paying down this bond that we're going to need to address in the town? What's going to break? How heavily are we depending on the reformers' rent as a revenue income? Because I would say I'm not confident that it might be something that we can count on for many years to come. And I do have issues with walk-in for check-in purposes. I grew up in a very poor part of Vermont. I've seen a nasty cycle in my own family of, you lose your license, you can't get a car, so you can't get a car, so you can't get a job, so you can't get a job, so you can't get your license back, and it goes like this. So while I don't think we should put people that protect us in danger so that we can always be protecting those that are in a rough place, I would say I hope that maybe somebody could be more creative. The bus, when I lived in New Orleans, I took the bus. We had way more buses than we ever will up here, and I was still leaving my house an hour early to get to my waitressing job, which was like, probably if I was less scared to ride my bike, I could have been there in 10 minutes. The bus can sometimes be wicked long, have a lot of stops. I'm not sure that that's going to provide people a best way to do their check-in. So I wonder if something else can be done, and we were just having a conversation that maybe somewhere else can be a check-in place downtown. Could the courthouse service something? Could there be something else? There was a gentleman that said, you know what, not everybody lives downtown. He's right. I don't live downtown. I have to drive to the police station no matter where it is. I would wonder if there is a concentration of people that live downtown, that maybe some of those check-ins might be highly concentrated in those places, and I don't know that for sure. So while I'm completely in favor, I guess that I would just say that I will feel better knowing that I came to this microphone and said, I'm worried about more money in the next 5 to 25 years. I'm worried about check-ins for people that find themselves in positions that, believe me, it's been frustrating to watch my own family go through it, but I know they're trying, and I know some of these people get stuck. So I would hope we can be creative. And I would just say, reformer revenue stream, not sure I would want to weight that very highly on an incoming revenue stream. And that's it. Thank you for all the work you've done. I know you've done a lot.
Yes, Ms. Hasegawa.
I'm Maya Hasegawa, District 2. During the break, I had a short conversation with Selectwoman O'Connor and Chairman Gartenstein about an issue that has came up at the Development Review Board that I haven't heard discussed anyplace except at our District 2 caucus last Wednesday. And that is the issue of traffic and the intersection of Black Mtn Road and Putney Road. The DRB has approved several projects, new projects, on Black Mtn Road recently, and the comments were not necessarily about the projects themselves, but about the traffic. And the fact that people were saying that I have to wait 3 or 4 cycles of the light in order to exit Black Mtn Road onto Putney, especially if the person in front is making a left turn. It is, we've heard about the number of people that go to the police station. I'm not worried about the police themselves being able to get through. I don't think that is going to be an issue because they're, one, they can put on their sirens and they can go through, and 2, there is a back way, I believe, to get from the Reformer building out to Putney Road. But I am worried about all these people who visit the police station. We've talked about people being able to walk from the north end. There is no sidewalk on Black Mtn Road. I don't know how many people know that, but there is no sidewalk. When you drive down there and you encounter people walking, it can be quite dangerous. I know, because I've encountered people who are walking down Black Mtn Road when I'm in a car. So I think I'm opposed to the move for some reasons that probably aren't financial and they're kind of intangible, having to do with the fact that we are trying to build up our downtown. And what does it mean when an essential service leaves downtown? What does that do psychologically to the fabric of the town? And I can't quantify that. I can't argue the financial figures. I can't do anything. But I wanted to raise that as a question, and I wanted to raise the traffic as a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to address that and also the prior three questions that were raised. And before I do, I just want to make clear that I'm responding to the factual questions that were asked. I think everybody up here has a very healthy respect for the fact that, you know, as a community, we're not all going to see things exactly the same way. We're not all going to agree on exactly what the best course of action is going to be. We've said earlier there's no perfect plan, and none of us would represent that this is a perfect plan. But those of us who support it believe it is the best plan from a long period of time of looking at the problem. So with full respect for the fact that you have other reasons to be against the plan or opposed to the plan, and there are other people in the room, I'm sure, who feel that way too, factually, the traffic concern we think is very small. There would be some additional traffic generated. We think more people would go in and out of a police station than probably go in and out of the newspaper facility. But the data from the chief's research this past week indicates 559 people came to the dispatch window to make a report. Now, that's just reports of criminal activity and non-criminal activity, but things where, as the chairman said earlier, a card got punched. So that's not everybody who came, but that's an indication that those who came to do some official piece of business with the department, and that's over a period of time of about 13, 14 months, amount to a couple of people a day that are actually coming to the window to do that. If we said there may be, 10 times that many that are coming in just for informational purposes, which I think would be the very high-end estimate, then there might be 20 people a day that are actually coming in to have that kind of communication. So there would be some limited amount of traffic generated by the public, but I think it would be very limited. As far as the check-ins question, the town has been for a very long time providing a convenience to those people in our area who need to meet a court-ordered requirement to come and check in. Has been providing that, frankly, on behalf of the region and the court system. It's not a municipal obligation. The people who come and check in are people who have been arrested in communities all around us, not just those who have committed crimes in Brattleboro. We think it's a real issue, but we think it's an issue that we can collaboratively solve with the court system. The courthouse is going to remain right there, virtually next door to the municipal center. The sheriff is located in downtown. I don't know exactly what accommodation can be made. I know that it's the court system's responsibility that the town has fulfilled for a long time. And so in looking at the pros and cons of this question and what would be best for the people of Brattleboro, we didn't feel an obligation to meet that as one of the requirements, one of the criteria for where the best place for a police station was. We think we can work with the criminal justice partners to address that need. On the overall question of dollars, I can't be as reassuring. We have other deferred needs in our community, and we have things that will break. There's no question about that. We'll have surprises along the way, even when we've got really good, solid, long-term capital plans in place. So we got work ahead of us to do in that regard, to identify those needs well and prioritize those needs well and fund them over a long period of time, in some reasonable priority order, and deal with the surprises as they pop up. In my opinion, that concern and that reality can't stop us from meeting this need now, especially when this particular need has been put off for so long. And the last question about the reformer income, if the reformer were to leave, that's real income. That's estimated to be $20,000 a year of net revenue to the town. But because we are optimistic that we will be able to develop some kind of governmental partnership at the municipal center, even if we only fill a third of the available space at the municipal center, that ends up washing. And if we fill more than a third of the space at the municipal center, then we have a net positive financially, even if we don't have the reformer up at 62 Black Mtn Road.
Further debate? Mr. Agave.
I'd like to talk about community. It's not, well, just to preface that, we continue to talk as if we are obligated to spend $14.1 million more. We aren't. We don't have to build the addition outside the police station. The town manager's already indicated that the major health and safety issues can all be remedied for a lot less, for $1 million or $2 million. Moving up to Black Mtn is going to be $8 or $9 million, all said and done. When you add in the bonds, you add in the interest, you add in the distant costs, et cetera, et cetera. Even sidewalks, you hear more and more all the time. If we really have that kind of money, if we really have an extra $5-6 million to move the police station up the Black Mtn Road, in a community where we do feel safe, this community's not out of control, and moving the station way up there is not going to change that one way or the other. Crime is not going to go up and down because the station is up there or down here. It's not, no criminal is going to say, oh my goodness, they got a new police station on the north end of town, I'm not going to bring in any more drugs. Not likely. Things are going to stay very much the same. So besides for correcting a few health and safety issues, we don't gain much from moving it up there. But we do lose a big chunk of money. In a community that we've never really talked about, what is a community? A community is where people look after each other. I stand here as a community rep. I'm not representing myself. I'm not representing you because you're here. I'm representing everybody that is not here. I am representing the hundreds and hundreds of people in the Brattleboro Housing Authority and the 250 individuals and families on a waiting list to get in, the poorest of the poor. I am representing the hundreds waiting to get into affordable housing at the Land Trust. I am representing the overflow shelters, the homeless, and the overflow shelters that there's hardly room for anymore. And all the people trying to get a free lunch out of the churches, all the kids who only see a square meal 180 days a year, they get one lunch. That's the best nutrition they get. And the myriad of other problems. If we think we have in our pockets an extra $5 or $6 million to essentially achieve a higher level of comfort and efficiency for the police, which isn't going to change anything, I suggest we just leave it in our pocket. If we, to me, to save that money and begin to look at ourselves and what can we really do for our community, for our future. 25% of the entire personal income in this town is welfare money from the federal government, from everything from subsidized housing and food stamps to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. What if some of that starts, what if the federal government begins tightening up and we start losing that bit by bit, which is happening? Regardless of these forces outside of this town that we have no control over, the fact of it is, in the end, we are going to be standing here ourselves and saying, what do we do? It doesn't matter what happened elsewhere or what caused our problems. We're here. And what do we do? And how do we function as a community? And I feel, to me, When I vote no, I am voting for a community. Even though, granted, to say no, to save the $6 million, doesn't mean that our leadership is now going to take a much deeper, broader look at our future. That this 21st century, to me, has been nothing but a decline, and declining ever faster. If there's anything about this 21st century that we have to achieve, it is community, it is cooperation, it is thinking about and helping ourselves as a community and as a people. And quite frankly, if we don't do that, all the police in the world are not going to make us safe.
Further debate, further questions? Ms. Miller.
Nancy Miller, District 1. I just want to reiterate my appreciation for all the work the Select Board and the committee has done over the past bunch of years. I know it's considerable. I know it's been arduous. But I also have to voice the fact that as a community, I don't think we can afford everything we want. We've started with a very, very high mark in terms of trying to meet all the needs of the police and fire facilities. I think we should get on with the fire facilities. I don't understand why everything is tied together and we are not beginning work on the renovation of the central station with a scaled back, reducing it from the taking off that third floor that you originally had on. So I don't understand why everything is tied together and we're locked into this debate over whether we should be, as a town, we should be renting property and competing with private property owners downtown. I don't think that's the role of the town, to be renting property and competing with others who already are paying high taxes and have property to rent. If we want a viable downtown, I really think we should keep the police station downtown and not move it to one of the far corners of town. It doesn't make sense to me. I think originally no one thought outside the box. We have a beautiful library right next to the municipal center. And next to that library and in front of the municipal center, there's an empty yard with stairs that no one can negotiate to go up. And so they're never used. Why didn't the committee initially look at that empty space and design something for the police department in that empty space that would be comparable to 2 floors like the library is? I think we would have been better off and we wouldn't have wasted a lot of money that has already been wasted. So I'm for going back to the drawing board, but definitely not spending the kind of money to buy and then renovate the reformer building. Thank you.
Further debate? Ms. Melton.
Paula Melton, District 1. First, I have a point of order question. Will the votes be counted here now?
The votes will be counted 1/2 hour after we recess.
Okay, thanks. Sorry if I missed that before.
We have a half an hour to vote. The polls will be kept open for half an hour after we recess, at which point the town clerk will announce the results.
Thank you. So I want to echo what others have said about the work of the building committee and the select board and coming up with an alternative that we were able to deliberate about before a regular town meeting. I volunteer on the finance committee, and I know those volunteer hours are precious, and I really, really appreciate it. That said, I don't think that the alternative plan is adequate. I believe very strongly that the police station belongs in a central area with the highest population density. I also feel like, not at this meeting, but at other meetings, I've heard people being sort of glib about the ability of people to take the bus. And I understand that, like, I'm a homeowner, I have a car, I have choices, I have options. If you're in that position, it's really easy to think, oh, well, they can just jump in a cab. So I just want to invite people to challenge themselves to one day, and you're going to need the whole day. Pretend you don't have a car and try to go buy your groceries at the Hannaford. So the plan that we're voting on of moving to Black Mtn Road is profoundly flawed. And 2 weeks ago, I was absolutely sure I was going to vote against it. But in fact, I just put my ballot in the box voting for it. And there are 2 reasons for that. The first one is that the backup plan, for whatever reason, is even more profoundly flawed. And I think that we are in an emergency situation with the police. I do not believe we have time or energy to go back to the drawing board and try to find a better plan downtown or in the southern part of town where there's so much population density, where I believe the police department belongs. The second reason that I voted yes already is that I have toured the police station like many people here, and I've been frustrated for years by the inability of this community and this body to just make a decision and just move forward. I think the police who serve our needs are already demoralized by their space, where we have been forcing them to work for decades in inadequate space. And I just don't have the stomach to say no to this plan, because we need to move forward.
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bob Stevens, District 2, and I too want to thank the numbers of people who've been working on this for months. I am not in favor of moving the police station to Putney Road, probably for the host of reasons that David, I think, outlined pretty well to begin with. I do think there's some value in having our institutions downtown. I think economically, I think there's, it was clearer today, although I'm not sure, I think people were still sort of standing up and saying, well, it's less expensive to go to Putney Road. But again, if you take that point by point, the loss of taxes is mitigated by renting for the reformer, which is a 3-year lease, which there's risk associated with that, whether that gets re-rented. The $1 million in first cost is sort of mitigated by the increase in operational cost of owning another 20,000 square feet of building. And that number of $3 a square foot, I think is, from our experience, is possible, but it's on the low side. And the one thing I can tell you is that going into debt is a cost that stays constant for 20 years, and your operating costs are not. Operating costs are going to go up every year, year after year. So I think we're probably already spending a little more, not what people's assumption is of less of going out to Putney Road. And we are now taking the resources, I know Orion mentioned, 2 problems and not combining them. However, we do own an existing building that needs a lot of work. And, the life safety is a piece. Maybe that's $250,000. You got to do that. You don't have any choice on that. But the building also needs a deep energy retrofit and windows and other things. And you could have used this project to help do a piece of the building for that. And renting to tenants, in my experience, at some point you're going to have to bite that off, and it costs us money to bring tenants in. Tenants, although the tenants you mentioned, the housing authority and state office buildings, those are bankable tenants. They may bring money to do fit up, so the community doesn't have to spend that money. However, those tenants could also be helping other businesses in this community that are commercially trying to stay in business and pay taxes and pay debt for improvements. Again, I speak for somebody in the industry here, and I can tell you that there's hundreds of thousands of square feet of office building available or coming available right now. Many of them, Winston Prouty Center just bought the Austin School. They're looking for nonprofits. They probably have 50,000 square feet. They would love to have the housing authority go there to help them pay for those costs. And there are downtown buildings that, whether it's Class A, Class C, that are struggling to sort of pay their bills and pay their taxes. So I don't think that the community, that the town, again, it's a good solution. You might reduce our taxes if you can rent that out, but you're just sort of shifting issues to other places. So on balance, I sort of fall the other way. I really do think that this is an opportunity to invest in our downtown community, to use the resources of redevelopment for the police department to take care of a building we own that is going to need work, and the new building we buy, if we buy the reformer, that's going to need work as well. You know, buildings wear out after 20 years. So again, I think it is time. You know, we need to do something, and thanks again for all the work that people put to get us here today.
Further debate? Mr. Oeser.
Robert Oeser, District 3. First of all, I want to thank the town manager, Peter Elwell, the select board, chief of police, Mike Fitzgerald, for all the work you've put into this, and the committee, especially in terms of the transparency and the information that you've gotten out there. District 3 reps, however, did receive some emails from folks who had concerns, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't share at least some of the comments that seemed to resonate with me when I read them. So one writer said, while it's true that Brattleboro is not just the Main Street area, having easy access for those without a car or even for tourists around town is worth something. And then, so you question that and you say, well, what is it worth? A follow-up email elaborated, I have no statistics, but have had a couple of experiences, including a friendly one with tourists, that made me glad the police station was within walking distance. And the writer said, I realize this doesn't even begin to be a microcosm of the bigger picture, but it is just a viewpoint. Another writer said, the police have made efforts, great efforts, I would add, with Coffee with a Cop to increase positive community interactions. These efforts are well supported by a downtown presence, with easy pedestrian walk-in interaction. That may be a bit of an overreach. What does it say to the community to have the police isolated on the outskirts of town? That may be a bit of an overreach, but there is a difference of perception if you come into an area to deal with an issue and leave, as opposed to be there. That may be an overreach as well, but it resonated with me to some extent. There are some differences in numbers that I was unclear with. On page 72 of the booklet, there's an indication that Ms. Bouboulis had said of 40% of the visitors to the police department either walking or arriving by bicycle, if you combine those two figures. Chief Fitzgerald put out a memo recently that said for the last year and a few months, there were 12,000 some odd calls for service. Only about 4% of them, 559, were in person to the municipal center. If you subtract those two numbers, is that the percentage of check-ins, or is that some other number? Does that number represent something else other than check-ins? People have told me, people who don't live in town but work in town have told me that they've seen police interact with some of our folks who are well known to the chief just on the street. That may not be, as the first writer said, what is it worth? Is it worth something? It's worth something in terms of not being totally alienated from this community. Peter Elwell's memo that was sent by email on March 10th said, and it was said here again today, that there is at the Central Fire Station a 24/7 safe refuge, and it will continue to serve that purpose in the future. My question regarding that, so that's a long preamble to a question, and the first question is, perhaps someone could speak to how that safe refuge could respond to the concerns of these two email writers, to the non-emergency visits that are recorded in the memos, and to visibility downtown. I don't want to put check-ins with that because I think check-ins, to my mind, were always inappropriately placed. And maybe there really needs to be an investigation as to where check-in should be done more appropriately, if there's another agency to do that. But that's question number one. The other piece of this is the cost, and I think we've kind of beat this one up a little bit. To take the point that even if you do take the municipal center and rent out that space, whatever that cost is that's associated with bringing that facility up to grade in order to do that should probably be subtracted from whatever the benefits are to moving to Black Mountain. And because otherwise you can't take the benefits of the rent out of that equation. And I think we've come up with some thumbnail numbers that might be about $500,000 at this point. So anyway, if that $1 million figure is real, I guess is the question, and say that it was, but if you take that number out, is that still real? So those are the two questions. Is that $1 million still real, taking that into account? And can Safe Refuge really deal with the visibility and the downtown issues?
A member of the administration, Mr. Elwell, is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think it's on. I'll address the second one first. The costs, as Mr. Gartenstein said earlier, the costs related to doing the life safety work at the municipal center have mostly been funded. There will be some additional appropriation required, not in the budget that you'll be considering a week from today, but a year from now. A week from today, we are proposing the expenditure of the money necessary to do the sprinkler work, which is the second of the 3 phases that we are committed to in our compliance agreement with the state for how we're going to bring the building back into compliance. So those monies are available, actually, from the appropriation that Representative Town Meeting approved last year, the $485,000 that was appropriated from fund balance and set aside for this purpose, and the possible expenditure on other things as well. I won't go the deeper dive into all of that. There were reasons why we didn't have to spend any money on Elliott Street or much money on the retaining wall at Green Street, and so the lion's share of that $485 is available to be spent at the municipal center. That work will be work that has to be done, that's not part of the municipal center project either. It's work that would be done, when I say the municipal center project, the municipal center alternative for the police department. The municipal center alternative for the police department, the $5.1 million, is just work for the police department. So it cleans up the basement so that it can be reused for the department, and it does the renovation and addition at the west end of the municipal center. There's much other space in the municipal center that would not be touched as part of that project. That piece, that life safety money, is money that would be spent either way, and it would not be absorbed as part of the alternative for this decision today. The one part of it that would be addressed, the one cost that we see in terms of the life safety issues at the building that would be addressed as part of the police project, if you decided that you would prefer to have it there at the municipal center rather than up on Black Mtn Road, is the mold. And as Mr. Gartenstein indicated earlier, that's on the order of $55,000 to $60,000 of expenditure. So I would reiterate that from my perspective, for the reasons we've discussed a couple of times now and set forth in the paperwork, I think the $1 million is real from a capital investment point of view. It is equally real that there are offsetting operating costs. And in that, we think that this decision before you today nets out to about a wash, and that the opportunity to rent space at the municipal center would then create a net positive to some degree that can't be quantified today. On the safe refuge question, I think it would be really important that we have a clear understanding with each other that we mean safe refuge. We mean it in its explicit meaning. So the question that was posed to us was, what about when somebody's downtown, particularly in the nighttime hours, and feels uncomfortable, either there's somebody that seems to be following them, or they've had some circumstance that they're leaving and they need to go someplace to feel safe, where can they go if the police station isn't downtown anymore? And so in answering that question, we say, please, as you always could have, but maybe we didn't make it clear enough, please know that you can go to the fire station. Know that they are there, particularly in the nighttime hours. If they're not out on a call, they're going to be there to be able to let you into the fire station, and you will have your safe refuge. And if you need a police officer, they can call one to come to the station and assist you. So we think it serves that safe refuge purpose well. It does not, the fire station does not serve the purpose of addressing non-emergency daytime visits to the police department. Those need to be addressed in the other ways that we've been talking about today.
Can I follow up as well? To follow up on the answer? Yes. Okay.
There's also been some inquiry about the amount of traffic that comes into the police station. And so I just want to clarify the nature of the data that's been provided. On page 72 of the materials, where it says Municipal Center Survey, 100 visitors, in August, the police at random 1-hour intervals for a period of about 12 hours did an unscientific survey and asked people who were coming into the municipal center why they were coming in and how they got there. And over that 12-hour period, they counted 100 people in total coming into the municipal center, 33 of whom were coming to the PD. And of those 33 people who were coming into the PD over that 12-hour accumulation of 1-hour periods, 60% drove, 30% walked, and 10% biked. That is a really unscientific survey of how people got into the police station over a 12-hour period during the summer. We did follow-up work in this memo that was sent out on Thursday about the number of calls for service that come in as a whole, cases being punched, which you can read on your own, 12,253 over this 14-month period, and including 559 who were classified as walk-ins. But that's also not all the people who came into the PD, because people walk in from time to time and ask questions and have to interact with police officers where cases aren't being punched. So there are different sets of data, and neither represents a full scientific study of everybody who walks into the PD.
Further questions or debate? The woman right here.
Georgia Morgan, District 2. I will be brief. Brattleboro has an outstanding police force. Their policies and practices are head and shoulders above the national norm. What you read about police in the newspaper, nothing to do with Brattleboro. Our department's present working conditions are unspeakable, to the point where it hurts retention and recruitment of the best officers, and only some of these conditions will be mitigated by improvements at the municipal center. The crazy-making workflow inefficiencies will remain. Day-to-day policing will not be impacted by moving police headquarters to the Black Mtn Road, because patrol cars and officers are distributed throughout the town during a shift, and the officers do most of their paperwork on mobile data terminals, laptops, tablets, rather than having to do it all at headquarters. The municipal center is a 19th century building, built in 1883, even with anachronistic extensions into the parking area. I think the Brattleboro Police Department deserves a more modern work environment that the Black Mtn facility will allow.
Further discussion and debate? Chief Emery, you've had your hand up.
Good morning. I'm Dave Emery from District 3. I think we missed the boat years and years ago when we proposed to build a fire station, police station at Exit 2. It was turned down because of the location of the police department was out of downtown and the cost. Fast forwarding to today, we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars looking at locations, hundreds and thousands of man-hours looking at locations, and the dollars we spent were real dollars, real money out of our pocket. And so here we are years later still saying we don't know what we want to do. If you look at when the committee came together and said, okay, we're going to take all this into consideration. We had a $14 million budget. And we said, okay, we are going to keep the police station at the municipal center. We spent, again, lots of money and did a design. The design was put out and it was, again, rejected for multiple reasons. One was a historic value. We don't want to change the appearance of that. Matter of fact, I think, Ms. O'Connor, you objected to it then. But now you want it to come back, so I don't know how that's going to change there. So then what happened is it became a money issue. And there was a petition that came back that brings us back to today. The selectmen have jumped forward and shown you that you can save $1 million by moving the police department out and renovating the downtown. And I work in that building, by the way, now. And it does need renovation, but not to the extent if the police department stays there. I obviously have a real interest in that because I still have a son that works at the police department and a son that works at the fire department, so I might be a little bit biased. But on the same hand, it's time, folks. We can't continue to sit here and go back to the drawing board. It's time for you to make the vote and stand by it, and I clearly support it, so I'm urging you to support this motion and pass it, and let's get it done before we pay a lot more and somebody gets really hurt that doesn't need to.
Dr. Tortolani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I'm Bob Tortolani, District 2. And I want to thank all of you who've done all this work and given us all this information. I want to particularly thank the police department members and the fire department members for keeping us safe and keeping our property safe. Mr. Corbeil said this is a no-brainer. I saw this as being somewhat of a difficult decision to make. So what I oftentimes do, traditionally over the years, as a rep, I've gone around to my neighbors, friends, and constituents, and spent several hours with them talking about the issues. And yesterday was a lovely afternoon, and I did the same thing yesterday. I spent several hours in my neighborhood, Oak Grove, Fuller Drive, speaking with my neighbors, friends, and constituents. Some of them were very well knowledgeable about the issues here, some not so knowledgeable, others didn't have a whole lot to say about it. But I did speak to 32 individual people from about 25 different households. And I just want to tell you, first of all, the theme was they really appreciate what the police department personnel do. Great appreciation for the police department. A great interest in the downtown area and the preservation of that and preserving the things that we hold so much, so dear to us. The vote, according to the people, 20 people of my neighborhood preferred to keep the police station centrally located. 4 wanted to see it moved to Black Mtn Road, and 8 didn't have any strong opinion. It was about 5-1 on those who voted one way or the other. That's just informational. The key feeling was that they wanted to see the police station centrally located. They thought it was very important to the community to have it in the downtown area. They also had a great desire to meet the needs of the members of the police department. And in general, they wanted to do what was best, but they thought very much strongly about the fact they wanted to see the police department stay where it was. I just wanted to share that information. Thank you.
Mr. Harvey.
George Harvey, District 3. I don't have a lot of money, so I don't have a car. I live on Elliott Street. I walked up here from Elliott Street to attend this meeting. That's what I do. I walk or I ride a bike. I also go to the municipal building every week because I work on my show on BCTV. And the result of that is that I approach the municipal building from the stairs coming up in front or through the driveway down through where the police cars park in the back once a week. I can tell you there is a bike rack there, and I've parked my bike in it many times. And I may actually have parked my bike there and seen 2 other bikes, but I don't recall ever having done that. I do recall one bike there, which I've always assumed belonged to somebody who worked in the building because it was still there when I left 3 hours later. Now, walking into and riding into that building, I can tell you I don't think I have ever passed anybody coming in or out on the front stairs. I've gone up those stairs and down those stairs many times. I don't recall anybody on the street behind the municipal building except when people were voting there. And I have to tell you, I really love that building. I think it's a great building, absolutely great, until I get inside. And when you get inside that building, it's not so great anymore. And I appreciate the fact that the police would like to be somewhere else. I also appreciate very much the work that has been done on investigating other places. We have decided as a community some years ago that we were going to put money into doing something about the location that the police were in. And I think that it's important that we understand, I don't particularly like the idea of walking up to the Reformer building if I'm going to walk up there, or even riding my bike. I have done that. I've walked up to SIT. But I don't think that's my position is a reason to vote against this idea. Ultimately, there are 2 things that I would request whoever is in authority and position to do so consider. And of course, I'm not asking a question and I'm not going to bring this up at a vote at town meeting or anything like that. But I have 2 pictures in my mind that I find slightly distressing. One of them is, or very distressing, one of them is of somebody arriving at what used to be the police department at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for help and not being able to find anybody. And it would be very nice to have a payphone there, because a person who shows up at that time of day in trouble might have just lost their only cell phone. And payphones usually allow a 911 call without money. The other thing is, I think that it would be nice to think of a way to do a car share coming back from Black Mtn Road for anybody who needs a ride back to town. Thank you.
Further debate on Article 1. Mr. MacKinnon.
Dale MacKinnon, District 2. Trying to get the exact quote. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. And right now, the police facilities aren't good enough. Is that better?
Yes.
Right now, the police facilities aren't good enough. my first reaction, my first thought about having the station moved up to Black Mtn Road is concerned that it's too far away. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind. It's an emotional reaction. It's not my most rational reaction. That's my first emotional reaction to it. I came to this meeting uncertain as to how I felt, as what my vote would be. My concerns are assuaged when I realize that I, as a young person, have been treated, unfairly, poorly by law enforcement in different areas of the country. That has not ever been my experience in Brattleboro. I've been treated courteously, fairly, respectfully. And I feel that my concern of having a police station outside of town would be one if it were in a town where I was worried that I wasn't being looked out for, if I was concerned that that just as a citizen, I was, as soon as I was out of sight, that I would be out of mind. And that is not my concern in Brattleboro, and that is why I'm voting in favor of this article. Thank you.
Ms. Page?
Sarah Page, District 2. So many good statements and questions. If I had $1 for every time I've changed my opinion on how I vote, this would be paid for. However, while I lean toward Black Mtn because of the ability to really create a police station that works well for the people who work in it, and also, it sounds like if we are going to move forward, and I, like Ms. Melton, feel like I'm not sure we have the energy to go back to this again. My remaining concern is the presence of the police downtown. And I say that as a District 2 person who has raised kids here. And at some point, while I didn't want to let my chicks go too far afield, I said, well, they are of a certain age where they have to have independence, they have to be able to walk downtown. I want them to be independent, but I want them to be able to turn somewhere if they need help. And I always felt that having the police and fire downtown was a part of that. Yes, they could go into a store, many nice people behind the register who would help them. But really, police and fire were the people who came into their schools as kindergartners and introduced themselves. They were who I felt that my kids would be more inclined to seek help from. So, we have endured the transportation center and having the parking officers have an annex or something, a space down there. I am wondering why we haven't had more conversation, and so I'm asking the police chief here to speak to why we can't have more presence down at the transportation center. If our police officers, what I'm hearing is, and this makes good sense, they are out in their cruisers, and they've got their laptops to do their work there, so they spend very little time at the police department. And they are out and about 1 hour a day or 1 hour per shift walking. I don't know how long the shift is, but there are other times when I'm assuming they're sitting because you can't do your paperwork and drive, that they are sitting. I'm wondering if it's possible, logistically, to have somebody always have a cruiser somewhere, either down at the transportation center or in the Elliott Street, the fire department area, because that would be a place where we could ask or mention to tourists who do ask I've been asked, where's the police station? And where we could go if needs be, and send our kids. Thank you.
Chief Fitzgerald is interrogated.
As for our presence downtown, our officers, when they do their walking downtown, and I want to make it perfectly clear, it's just not downtown. I mean, there are other places throughout the whole town, and a lot of this has been downtown, but the concerns of our residents out west, in the north, in the south end of town, from a law enforcement perspective, are just as important as the concerns of the people downtown. So I don't want to have the other citizens of Brattleboro feel alienated because they don't live downtown. Your concerns are just as important as ours. And that's a good lead into Mrs. Page, one of her questions about could there always be a cruiser in the area of Elliott Street or the Brattleboro Transportation Center. But I would caution against saying, yes, there always will be. Simply because, number one, all our cruisers are not outfitted with the mobile data terminals. We're getting there. It's a priority. It's certainly something that we're striving for, but they are very expensive. It's something that we have to look at federal and state grants to get, and then have our cruisers outfitted. The cruisers that we are purchasing in the future, we're all getting with the mounts that can accept that. So even though we only have 3 mobile data terminals, what we're hoping for is we get the mobile data terminals, we can just immediately plug them into the cruisers. We don't have to upfit the cruisers. So we are working towards that, and that does keep them out of the station. And as to, once again, to go back to can we permanently or pretty much have some presence on Elliott Street and Transportation Center, we have to look at the whole town. And there are times where different sections of the town obviously have a greater priority of what requires our attention. Downtown, during your regular work hours, from 10 to 5 or 6, absolutely, that's probably where a lot of activity is going on. Rush hour hits around 5 to 7, 4 to 7, things of that nature. We're probably more up on Putney Road. Weekends, we're out west, simply because of the traffic down the avenue. If there's current event or some type of public events going on, we're focusing on that. So Captain Kerrigan does a fantastic job getting with the lieutenants and sergeants and basically coming out with a plan of the day on where we're going to focus. And we understand the Brattleboro Transportation Center needs our attention, and we most certainly do what we can to get somebody down there.
Further questions or debate with regard to Article number 1? Mr. Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Hyam Siegel, District 3. There's an awful lot of what other people have said that I have in my notes that I would have said, so I'll spare you hearing that again. The point I'd like to say that, first off, I so want to say yes to moving the police station out there for all the reasons, or at least most of the reasons, that everybody has expressed. The place where I keep getting stuck is on the presence in town. Previous speaker spoke to a fixed place, I think, where somebody could go if they were in trouble. They didn't have to find a moving cruiser, and that would be important. I think the one constituent that hasn't been discussed much, and that I feel very strongly is important in this, are people, we've talked about the people that have to check in on a regular basis by court order, and that's one thing that people on the wrong side of the law, so to speak, one service that the police station currently serves that presumably could be picked up by a different picked up elsewhere. But there are other functions that the police station serves for people who have had troubles with the law and or are currently having troubles with the law. I've had one experience myself where I was bailing somebody out. And in order to bail them out, I had to come up with cash. I had to, if I didn't do it quickly enough, the person would have been transported up to Springfield, and then it would have been overnight for them. It would have been a next day operation to get to Springfield, to get them back to Brattleboro. There would have been considerable more effort on my part and the part of everybody involved. And I didn't get the impression in speaking with the police that there was any particular interest in trying to delay the process of them going up to Springfield while I got together my act to be able to come up and with the bail. Now, you could argue, well, this person got himself in trouble. There's one person here who made an impassioned argument in that regard. I think these people have rights, and I think in this case it was somebody who hadn't yet gone to court, so he may well have, he was guilty, but he may well have not been. I think I think it's important that these people be represented. I think they add them to the list of people that Spoon spoke about. And I also, boy, am I having troubles keeping track of myself here. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. It may come to me. I'm afraid I've lost my train of thought. But certainly it's those people that I wanted to speak for that haven't been spoken for as of yet, and in general, the access. Oh, I know what it was. It was that I'm guessing, I'm speculating, but my guess is that a high percentage of the people who don't have cars live downtown, so that population that has to walk is probably better concentrated in the downtown area. And so that was what I had to say. Thank you.
Further debate. Let's see, who's had their hand up here the longest? I think Ms. Distler.
Arlene Distler, District 2. Before this is all done, I want to give a shout out to the late, great Prudent proposal, which got dropped somewhere along the way. The American Heritage Dictionary defines prudent as wise in handling of practical matters, exercising good judgment or common sense. When we got handed the original 4 options, or 3, I guess it was, I was really glad to see that. It seemed like the taxpayers had been heard. I was one of the people that took around petitions and got to hear their concerns about the cost of going full on with this project. So I still have concerns about the cost. There's capital expenses that will come up in addition to this. So I just want to express that we need to keep the taxpayers and their sentiments in mind. And if these higher priced alternatives go through. And I agree that something has to be done and done soon. I hope the select board and whoever else is able to put their attention will really work on building the grant list and other revenue sources. Thank you.
Further debate on the article. Mr. Underhill.
Ben Underhill, District 1. A couple of things. First, if you vote no because you feel the facility should be downtown, I fully respect that. If you vote no because you feel this shouldn't be done, that's pretty foolish in my mind. We talked about maybe not doing anything, saving the money, but that doesn't talk about some integral things like the morale of the staff working there, the issues of trying to keep and acquire a staff. Especially in the police department, turnover is not a good thing. In my opinion, experience counts. And I think we've seen a lot of times we're training these people and they go elsewhere, which is a huge waste of money. We've turned this over already to a couple of generations. At the West Brattleboro meeting a couple of days ago, Joe Jewett mentioned that his dad worked on this project back when I was in high school. I was on a committee with Kate's mom about 15 years ago looking at this project. We've passed this on to subsequent generations. It doesn't work. We've got to go forward. We've got to get this done. Originally, I was for keeping the project downtown. I like the continuity of having it in the downtown area. After listening to Chief Fitzgerald, the advantages of Black Mtn Road, I've changed my mind. We should be proud of the police department and respect them, and I feel sorry that they have to work in some ridiculous conditions right now. With Black Mtn Road, the central fire station may be a safe hub for people downtown, and that's okay. It'll take getting used to. There'll be changes the police will have to do that we'll have to get used to. Police may have to respond more to people at their homes or somewhere else instead of downtown. And the chief says this will be done. We have to trust him that it will be done and hold him accountable if it isn't. Having the project up at Black Mtn will also be more accessible for parking and a lot more room. With the expansion, there's going to be a lot less room. And things like having the voting there may not be able to be done because there's not enough parking spaces for people. So, thank you.
Is there further debate on Article 1? Ms. Turnus.
Katherine Turnus, District 3. I just have a couple things I want to say. First of all, you know, I found it very offensive with the arrogance about how everybody has a car. I don't have a car. There are plenty of us that live downtown that do nothing but walk. I do a radio show on WVEW that I leave at 5:30 in the morning to go over to the Hooker Dunham building and leave at 8 o'clock. You realize that, first of all, to take a taxi to where you're going costs $12 one way, which means that somebody would have to spend $24 just to get to the police station if they had to get there to make a complaint. The bus, yes, it's $3 for a round trip, but some of us don't have, there are people who don't have that $3. That $3 is something that would be significant for them to be able to survive, to buy food or medication. Now, my other qualm is with this survey that you did. I am chair of the Brattleboro Senior Meals, and I'm going to tell you quite honestly, we had those surveys out there, and I don't know what the percentage of the surveys that you received that were put out, but I will tell you honestly that I know personally that we had 80 seniors that were there that, number one, some of them didn't have computers to be able to respond to the monkey. And secondly, they saw the surveys out on the table and said, Well, what am I going to do with it? Oh, well, you have to take it over to the municipal building. The big thing was, well, how do I answer this? And some of those questions were very difficult for people to understand and respond to. So I would like to know just what your percentage of how many you put out there and how many you received that you're basing all of your responses are to put this on Black Mtn Road. I guess I came in with the fact that I was going to vote against it. I'm not really sure right now. I'm still vacillating, but I'm concerned about the municipal building. I'm concerned about the fact that I'm a renter. If I was going to rent a space at the municipal building and it was not safe and it was not energy efficient, I don't want to rent there. So how can you get this to the point where you're going to entice people to come, first of all, as a landlord, to get them to rent there? So so far I have not had that answered, and at this point I'm still vacillating.
Is there a member of the administration that would like to address Ms. Turnus's concerns or questions?
I can respond about the survey that was conducted. It was made available both online and on paper, and we recognized in sending out the survey that there wasn't a particular control about who was going to respond and a method for preventing people from doing multiple responses. I can say that the results of the survey were not the basis upon which I think any select board member made their decision to make this recommendation to the town meeting. Rather, it was just one more set of data points that we looked at.
Further debate? Yes, sir.
Kip Tewksbury, District 2. At one of the earlier informational hearings, Chief Fitzgerald talked about the how the vision was to make it so rather than you having to go to the police could come to you, that is door-to-door service. And I wonder if you could speak to that in terms of the concerns about access and people who don't have cars and those things.
Chief Fitzgerald, can you respond?
That is correct. We have said all along that you do not have to come to the police station for services, that we come to you, we make house calls. Give us a call, we're going to show. Obviously, that has not and will not ever change. That's part of what we do. But I'd like to go a step further is Mr. Gardenstein was looking at that initial survey that we did, and he's absolutely correct. It was 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. If you happen to walk through the municipal building, we just basically asked who you were here. That survey was never intended to be scientific. It was more of a straw poll, just to see how many people come to the municipal center. As a matter of fact, we made it so simple that we just stopped at 100, so our math would have been real easy. That's the God's honest truth. So we got to 100, we said, okay, stop. How many came to the PD? 33%. We're good. That's all it was. It was just a gauge, just to see how many people came in the municipal center. And he requested that we do a more in-depth, that come to the municipal center, to the police department, to actually report a crime in person. And we went back 14 months, and the staff literally by hand went in there and looked at, okay, what was reported in person and what was a crime, and they did a really, really good job. So it was 12,000 plus calls for service. Of that was 559 that came to the police department, and of that 559, 59 were crimes. So if you look at that sheet that I put out, there is not an incident there that you could not have called, and we couldn't have gone out to where you're at to do your VIN verifications, your citizens assist. Every category in that memo,
we can respond to your house. You don't have to come to the police station to do any of those activities. And that's what I would hopefully get that message out to everybody in town, whether they, they have a car or not. If you just don't want to leave your house, call us. If you want to deal with the police department, we will come to your residence.
Is there further debate with regard to Article 1? Ms. Carter.
Carrie Carter, District 3. It seems this discussion comes down to location. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Chief Guthrie. He'd been advocating for years for a more state-of-the-art and bigger and functional space for the police and fire department. And in light of the demanding and often thankless work you all do, you are certainly worthy, more than worthy of that. And my question is, in light of the fact that you will be renovating the municipal center anyway, is it viable? Is it a possibility that a portion of the municipal building could be set aside, and not just for the terrible, awful check-ins that some people feel at liberty to judge, but also parking tickets, and a lot of people that have parking tickets are not criminals. But also, I mean, I know I've often found cell phones and wallets on the street, and it's just very convenient to come by there and leave it off, or report. I come by, to fill out a report. But if there was just a part of the municipal center available for that sort of thing to make it more accessible for people so they don't have to take, by the time you go back and forth, it can take up a whole half hour of your time. And I'm sure Chief Fitzgerald doesn't want to come by your house to take care of a parking ticket. Well, maybe you will, I don't know. But my question is that a viable possibility?
Having a presence downtown for the police department is something that has been considered over the course of time that we've been looking at moving the PD up to Putney Road. We wanted to be careful not to represent that we were going to have a full-time staffed location downtown, because that's not the plan. But I think it remains on the table that we would hope to have some sort of location downtown where an officer might be spending some time, whether at the transportation, whether at the municipal center. It's a matter that's open for discussion, but that has not yet been fully decided.
But it's a viable possibility.
It's a possibility, but I don't want there to be any confusion about it being a full-time staffed location, because that would be overselling that alternative, and that's not the plan. So it's not the plan to have somebody from the police department stationary in an office downtown all the time.
But what about other than a police officer, some employee?
Well, during business hours, there's town offices open at the municipal center all the time. So there are alternatives for continuing to interact with the town government downtown.
But this will be up for discussion.
I think that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Webster.
Don Webster, District 3. We've heard a lot of conversation. This is the most vetted project I think I have ever witnessed in my 40 years here in town. So another study and everything else, what happens next, I leave to you and everyone else. What is our alternative? What happens if we don't do this? What drives me in this decision, though, is the society we live in has a crucial need for law enforcement that is effective, fair, equitable, and everything else like that. And so for me, the highest priority is our capacity to have a police department that can effectively deal in the issues that we face in the 21st century. this goes beyond drugs and that type of thing, but those are serious issues. So my question is to you, everyone else, what happens if they don't have that facility? If nothing happens, how effective is our police department going to be over the long term in dealing with our societal issues? And I see a facility as being a critical factor in helping them, at least doing that very, very difficult job. So that, to me, drives everything else. I had the other question is, if we do something else 3 years down the road, what's the cost going to be then? I urge you to support this project.
Further comments or questions on Article 1? Ms. Bouboulis, you've already spoken. Is there anyone who hasn't already spoken? All right, then we will take a second comment.
Doura Bouboulis, District 3. I just want to point out for those that are in desperate need to make this idea of Black Mtn Road work and the idea of having some sort of stationary police presence downtown, anything like that is going to cost more money. So if you think that that is a possibility and you're concerned about cost, then you have to weigh that in.
Further debate on Article 1. Mr. Siegel?
This question to Mr. Hyam Siegel, District 3. This question to the chief. I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, that that in the situation that the anecdote that I relayed earlier, where I was trying to bail somebody out, that you would probably not be enthusiastic about picking me up and taking me out to Black Mtn Road in order for me to do that in a fashion timely enough to have gotten there before the person being bailed out was shipped off to Springfield. Is that true?
Chief is interrogated, should he desire to be.
Yes, that is true. We would not have we would not have gone to your house to pick you up, to bring you to the police department to bail somebody out. What I'm talking about is quality of life services and, criminal matters and things of that nature.
I figured that. Thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
Further debate on Article 1. Hearing none, debate is suspended, and we will move to Article 2. However, it is quite apparent we do not have a quorum, so we cannot take any action under Article 2. However, if there's any announcements, you will have an opportunity under Article 2 to offer any non-binding resolutions or bring up any non-binding matters at the meeting next Saturday. However, the chair would entertain any announcements or anything of that sort at this time under Article 2. Ms. Bouboulis.
Doura Bouboulis, District 3. I just want to request that in next week's town meeting that we be sure and stick to the real rules of order. I think the select board and town management had a lot of opportunities to have back and forth when they weren't really directly being interrogated, and that is out of the bounds. And if we have a full meeting, it's going to make the meeting a lot longer as well. So I just request to make sure that we're really strictly following those rules.
Your comments are duly noted, Ms. Bouboulis. Mr. Corbeil, announcements, questions, or further comments under Article 2?
Corbeil, District 2. Judge, tell me if I'm out of order, but I'd like to make a motion under Article 2, even though we don't have a quorum, a non-binding motion. Is it possible for me to have a non-binding motion
Well,
be made at this time.
Mr. Corbeil, the thing is we obviously, in looking here, do not have a quorum.
I don't think that I'm thinking that a non-binding motion wouldn't affect it whether we get a motion or not.
Is there any reason why, that you wouldn't want to wait until next Saturday under other...
I guess it could wait.
If
I'm just asking a question.
If it is something that doesn't need to be taken up today because it's time sensitive, then I would prefer that you bring it up next week when we have a quorum, and then we can at least give you the benefit of a full complement of members to vote on your motion.
I don't intend to waste everybody's time.
Thank you, Mr. Corbeil. Any further announcements or other business to come before the meeting at this time under Article 2? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to recess at 11:40. Is there a second? All those in favor of recessing at 11:40 a.m. signify by standing. Okay, you may be seated. Any opposed? And the meeting is recessed for 30 minutes, in which you can complete your voting.
Okay, as I started to say without the microphone, I like to quote our former town moderator, who always, after a vote, would say, "Listen to the results of your vote." We had 138 ballots. Of those 138, we had 111 yes and 27 no. So, thank you.